everybody. Cooking in the kitchen with Sylvia again. This time I'm going to show you how to make my recipe for tamales. I'm actually going to make chicken and beef, but I'm going to show you how to get that started. Okay, so most of you know tamales, of course, delicious holiday meal that we like to prepare. But the first thing we want to do is we want to soften the corn husk. So I went ahead and heated some water here because I need to soften the corn husk. And if you're not familiar with what the corn husk look, they come in packages. Some of them are big packages. This is like an 8-ounce package of corn husk. They're all dry, so we need to soften them. That's why the hot water is going to be helpful. You can also soak them overnight. That makes it a lot easier. But if you use hot water, just pour it on top in a bowl or a pot container, of course, that can tolerate some heat. And try to cover them as much as possible with the hot water. If it doesn't cover it and you run out of water, just add some tap water. So the main thing here is we want to be able to submerge them into this hot water. So just put them in a pot like this. Eventually they will sink down a little bit. See, they're already starting to get a little soft. And just keep them in here for at least an hour, 2 hours, probably the best, but then they'll really be nice and soft. See, they're already getting soft. The hot water really helps. And if you need a little more water, just add some from your tap water just to cover them more. Okay? Now what I like to do sometimes, just to help keep them submerged, put a plate just on top of them like that, and that'll help them stay down. You can put another container on top of that if you'd like. And of course you're going to need your sink, so you can just move that out of the way until you're ready to fill your tamales. So now I'm going to show you what to do with the meat. Leave that there for about an hour or two, and we'll come back and clean those up. So as far as our meat, we want to use a roast beef chuck. You want to cut it in small pieces like this, kind of big chunks. You don't have to be exact. We're going to add some flavoring to this, and we're also going to add chili flavoring, but not right now. First we want to cook this meat so that it becomes really tender. So we want to be able to, you know, cut up our pieces of meat, get a big pot where you're going to put that. This is about, I would say, 3.5 pounds of beef chunk. I have these cooled in the refrigerator, that's why they're a little bit stuck, but that's okay. They're gonna cook down, and that's gonna be fine. So put your meat in a big pot. I'm actually, like I said, doing some chicken as well. I got that one already started, but it's gonna be pretty much the same process as what we're doing with the beef. So in this case, we're going to add a few peppercorns. This is about 8, maybe 10 pieces of round peppercorns, 3 cloves of garlic, 2 to 3 bay leaves, and about a medium onion, or if you have a small onion, 1 whole onion would work too. So we want to put that in our pot. We're going to add about a teaspoon of salt to this meat. Okay, just put that in there. And then we're going to add some water. Now, it's probably going to be about maybe 4 to 6 cups. I got about 6 cups of water in this pitcher, but it also depends on your container, how deep it is, or how much meat you're cooking. So really, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you cover the meat so that when it's boiling and stewing, you're not going to run out of water. So here we go. I got about 6 cups of water there. And that's probably what we need for now. You're going to keep an eye on it. You don't want it to dry out, but you also don't want to make it into soup. So most of this liquid is going to simmer down, so you're not going to have a lot of liquid left over, but you will have some, which is you're going to use in your recipe as well. So what we want to do with that, once we've got the water in there, and your container, get your fire going, get it to boil, get your meat to come to a boil, you can cover it, but keep an eye on it because we don't want it to overspill. So once it comes to a boil, sometimes you get that little foam on top of the, the rim of the container. You want to scoop that out and throw it away. Just discard that foam. That's just, it's actually a residue that comes from the fats of the meat. So you don't want to leave that in your stew. It's better to just go ahead and discard it. So right now, what we want to do is let this meat come to a boil. Let this water boil up, the steam in there, and then I'll show you how to skim off the foam from the top of the meat. Okay, I'll get back to you. Okay, so we have our beef meat container. It's already starting to boil up, and you could see that there is this foam. This is the one I'm talking about that I want you to just scoop it up with a spoon, and you don't need that in your stew. This is your meat. So just scoop it up like that, and you're just going to toss that away. Now, I'm sure you're not going to get every single one of it, but just get as much of it as you can. So just go like that, scoop it up. And it always comes up to the top. You can use a strainer, a small strainer if you like, but a spoon works just as well. And don't worry, you're not going to lose a lot of flavoring. The flavor is going to still be there. So that's really what you want to do. You just want to scoop some of that foam, that your meat. Sometimes your chicken does that too. And just get as much of it as you can. Okay? You don't have to get every single one of it. So now that we have our meat pretty much heated through and starting to boil, you want to lower the flame down a little bit, not a whole lot. You're not going to put it on low, but you're going to put it to like a medium low, maybe even a medium high is okay. And you're going to let this meat cook down. And that's going to take about an hour and a half to 2 hours. We want to get this meat to be really tender. So you've got plenty of liquid there. Just keep an eye on it that it doesn't dry up, and it probably won't. The water will go down, but you're not going to lose, it's not going to dry out all the way, as long as your fire is not too high. So we want to do that. I'm going to move this over to this other side because I want to show you how to prepare your chili sauce. Okay, so while we're waiting for that, like I said, keep it to like a medium high there. Okay, now on this container, I'm going to show you what to do with your chilies. Okay, because that's what's going to flavor your meat and also your masa. So let me get this out of the way. I'll be right back. What we want to do here is we're going to use some dried chilies. These are California, I think this is an ancho, a dried ancho, and you can get these in any supermarket where they have the spices. If you want to make your enchiladas, your tamales hot, you can add more chilies. We don't like ours too hot, so I kind of keep it down a little bit. But this is going to help give you that red chili that you want for your meat. And what you want to do is you want to take your chilies, put them in a container like this. Just put the amount of chilies that you're going to use. You can use 3, 4, maybe 4 or 5 that will make it more spicy. And then you're going to add a couple of cloves of garlic. And then we have to add just some water. Okay. Enough to cover these chilies. So you want to add probably 2 to 3 cups of water. And what we're going to do here is we want these to rehydrate. In other words, we want them to get a little bit soft. So we want to get them, I think I have about 3 cups of water here. So put that in there because we're going to also use the liquid when we're ready to put our chilies in the blender. Put that at a medium to high heat. Bring that to a boil. And then once it starts to boil, then you can simmer it down a little bit. But you still want to keep the chilies kind of heating through. So let's get that to a boil, and then I'll show you when it's time to what we're going to do next with our chilies. Okay? Okay, I had the chilies in here. I had the water boil. Once the water boiled, I let it, I turned off the fire, and I let the chilies sit in this hot water for about, I would say almost half an hour. Okay, so now we want to take them out because we want to remove the seeds, and then we're going to put them in the blender. So just grab something to pick them up. You don't want to burn yourself. They're still hot. Okay. So all we need to do is bring that over to the sink. I don't want to lose all the juices, but I do want to open it so that we can take out the seeds. So we just want to split them open like that. There we go. You see there's some seeds there. So just run them over a little water. Don't scrape it out, just let them wash away. Okay? So that's what you're going to do. Just take out the seeds. Keep them there. Now that they're soft, they're easier to remove those seeds. So one more here. Take out the stem. Just pry it open and remove the seeds. If you have a few seeds in there, it's not going to hurt it because we're also going to strain this. But this makes it easier to get rid of most of these seeds. Now we're going to put this in a blender. Just toss it in there. And then we want to add some of this liquid. You want to add about a cup or so. You can just spoon it out or just pour it in. So we're going to blend this until this gets really soft. Okay, so let me put that over here. Okay, now we're going to strain them. And just pour them here. This is where you're going to collect all those extra seeds. Okay. Now don't worry about this because we're going to put the rest of the liquid in here. You're going to add some more of the liquid. This is the soaking liquid. You don't have to use all of it, but at least another cup. There's probably just enough there to do the rest. And this is going to help clean your blender and get the rest of those juices from the chilies. And then just strain that in there. Okay. This way we won't lose too much of those chilies. So there we go. Okay, So now here we go. We're going to just scrape a little bit of the sauce. This is all the pulp of the chilies. Just scrape it in there. Okay. And get as much of that pulp out of your strainer. And let's put that aside. Now here's most of the pulp is already mixed with the liquid, and we're going to use that to make our flavor for our meat. Now our meat has been cooking for about an hour and a half now, probably a little more. It's cooking down nicely. Just, keep your lid a little tilted like this so that it doesn't overboil and it doesn't boil over. And then we're going to, once the meat is all cooked down and made soft and tender, then we're going to shred the meat and add that to our chili sauce here. So in the same pan that we were just using, we're going to add a little bit of oil, which is about 2 tablespoons. Okay. I'm going to bring that heat to probably like a medium heat, not too high, sort of a medium heat. And I had already taken out the garlic cloves I had in there earlier. I didn't want them to get too soft, so I took them out just before, maybe a minute that they were still in the hot water. But I took those out because I want to put them in this oil. And all we're going to do with this is we want to infuse the oil with this garlic. Okay, and that's going to take, I would say, about a minute. Just to warm it up. That will. You don't have to put it in the hot water. You can just use it directly, or you can put it in the hot water just to soften it a little bit. The main thing is to get that oil. Once you can start smelling the garlic in the oil, the vegetable oil, then you know it's ready to take them out. Okay, right now let's just leave them there for now. Now we are gonna add some seasoning to these chilies. We're gonna need some flour to help thicken the sauce. We're going to use some oregano, some ground cumin. I have some garlic powder, some salt, some tomato sauce. This is a 15-ounce can of tomato sauce. And some sugar. We're going to add that to season our sauce. So I think this is getting nice and see. I can already smell the garlic. Let them heat through a little bit. I don't usually throw this garlic away. Sometimes I'll use it for another recipe and add a little bit more garlic. In fact, I could even toss these inside that meat that's boiling there. I don't want to throw that away because it's nothing wrong with this garlic, except that we're just trying to infuse our oil. So let me do that. Put it away. Nothing gets wasted. Okay. So now to this, we're going to add probably about, I would say, 2 tablespoons of flour into this warm oil. I want to lower it down just a little bit. Okay. I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons. And we're going to cook that down. Just a little. Okay. that it's warmed up, we're going to add about 1 cup of this chili liquid. This is the puree. Just add it a little at a time. Gonna heat up. Now it's getting thick. Okay, that's what we want. I'm going to make almost like a gravy. See the sauce here starting to thicken. Keep your fire a little bit low. You don't want to burn your chili, so just bring it down just a little bit. Still want to heat it through. Okay, now here's where we're going to add some seasoning. We're going to add about a teaspoon, about half a teaspoon of salt. Okay, because remember, this doesn't have any seasoning other than the chili water. And you can add a little more later if you want. And then we're going to do the same thing with our garlic. We're going to add about half a teaspoon of garlic powder. We're going to add half a teaspoon of dried oregano. And we're going to add half a teaspoon of the dried cumin. This is the one that gives the flavor to your chili. Now I do have what's called the New Mexico ground chili. For those of you who don't want to use the dried chili pods, you can substitute the dried chili in lieu of that, but you're just going to have to add water to make your sauce. So I just thought I'd mention that in case you couldn't find the dried chilies. Okay, so bring that to a boil. See, our sauce is getting thick there. Now we're going to add some more of our soaking liquid, our pureed chilies, just to thin that out a little bit. Remember, this is going to go into our shredded meat, and I'm going to save some actually for the masa as well, not just the meat. So I'm going to heat that through. I don't want it to be too thick or too thin, but I do want to have it a little thicker. So I'm going to add a little more. Now, so altogether, that's probably about 2 cups of the chili that I use. So here we go. Even though it looks watery here, by the time you add it to your meat, it's going to cook down a little bit more. But it's a little bit thicker consistency. So we'll put this aside for now. I'm going to add my tomato sauce, and that's going to help thicken our sauce and also give it a nice red luster to our meat. Like I said, this is about a 15-ounce can of tomato sauce. If you don't have tomato sauce, you can use about 2 or 3 tablespoons of tomato paste. Okay? So I'm going to add that in there. Let all of that come together. You can keep it on a very low fire if your meat is almost ready for shredding, or you could just turn it off and warm it up a little bit until your meat is ready. So I'll leave this here. You do want to taste it a little bit just to see if you want to add a little more salt or a little more cumin. It's pretty good. I think I'm going to add just a little more garlic and a little more salt. So I'm going to add just another half teaspoon of garlic and about another half teaspoon of garlic powder. Oh, one thing to add also, and this is only because you added tomato sauce. If you don't add the tomato sauce, that's okay. but if you add about a tablespoon of sugar, it'll help minimize some of that bitterness that sometimes tomatoes give. So about 1 tablespoon of sugar is all you need to add if you're going to use the tomato paste. Like I said, you don't have to use the tomato paste, but I like it because it also gives it that dark, deep, rich red flavor, and the chili to the meat and to the masa gives it more flavors. So, okay, we're going to let this rest for a little bit. I'm going to wait for the meat to finish cooking, and then I'm going to show you how to put this together. Okay? Okay, everybody, let's check our meat. I did add a little more water. This was starting to dry out for me. The reason for that is because I want to have some of this liquid, the broth of this meat, to add to my masa when I'm ready to make that. So right now the meat has been cooking for about 2 hours. I would say maybe 2.5 because this was a lot of meat. You can tell it's ready when you start, pushing it down. It starts to fall apart. It feels a little softer. So once you get to that level, you've cooked it down pretty well. Now we want to shred this meat. Now, one of the things that I found that is easier on my sense, you can go ahead and turn it off, is to use my blender. So what I do is I grab a slotted spoon, has the little holes. Just grab a couple pieces of the meat. It's okay if you add some of the sauce, because it's not going to hurt it. Just put a few pieces at a time. Now you can do this by hand. Once the meat has cooled down, you can get a fork and shred it up by hand into little pieces, or you could do it this way. Sometimes this helps me as far as trying to get this, chopped up. I just give it a couple of little whizzes, and there you go. Your meat is pretty much shredded. And because it's already been cooked well, it doesn't it shreds easily. And if you miss a few pieces, then just give it another chop and put it in a container. So this kind of helps the process of not sitting there for a while or waiting too long to shred your meat. So like I said, just grab a couple of chunks, put it in your blender. And give it a quick little whirl. Okay, there you go. See, it's all shredded up. And I'm going to do the rest with the rest of the meat, and I'm going to reserve the liquid. And then I'm going to show you how to prepare the masa. Okay? I'll be back. Okay, I got my meat all shredded. I did remove the bay leaves. You don't need to shred those. I took those out before I started shredding the rest of the meat. So this is just going to get tossed. Now you've got your meat all ready. And here's the chili sauce that we made earlier. I've had that sitting there and it was getting thicker. So what you want to do is you want to add some of this, at least a cup, maybe a cup and a half of this chili to your meat, okay? And you're just going to get that mixed up in there. You don't have to, be too technical with it. You just want it to get some of those chili flavors in your filling. This is your meat filling. I actually like to reserve some of this filling so that I have some for the masa, and I also have a little bit to serve on the side. I add just a little bit more water so that when you serve your tamales, you can drizzle some of this sauce to your steamed tamales. So I'm going to save some of that for the meat later. So right now for the masa and the gravy. So right now I've got more than enough there. I've got the rest of this meat here. I'm just going to put it all together so that I can mix it. It's easier if I have a bigger container. And then you can have that set aside so when you're ready to fill your tamales. So let's get that incorporated in there. And after I do that, I'm going to show you how to make the masa. Okay, so here's where all your yummy tasting filling for your meat. Remember, this was about 3.5. This could have even been 4 pounds of chuck roast that I cooked. So that makes quite a lot of tamales. And don't be afraid if there's still pieces of onion in there. That's just going to add more flavor to your tamales. But once you incorporate your chili in here, you can taste it. You can add a little more chili if you want. You can add a little salt and pepper if you think it needs a little more salt. But it's pretty much done. You don't need to add anything more to it. Yep, it's good. So, like I said, some people like to have their tamales spicy. So that's where, you know, it depends on how many chilies you want to add to your sauce. So let's put that aside, because we're going to use that to, we're going to fill our tamales in a little bit. But right now I want to show you how to put your masa together. So you know what, I'm going to have to borrow my cup here. We're going to just use our tamale masa. This is not flour. Remember, this is mainly for making tamales. So we're going to start with about 3 cups, maybe 4. Depends on how much meat you have. Usually for that amount of meat, I usually need to make at least 3 cups of the masa. So might have a little left over, but that's okay. So there's 1, there's 2, and there we go, we got 3. So I'm going to add just a little bit more. I also like to have, I like to make my fillings fill generously, so that's why, you know, it just might look like a lot, but I'm going to make my tamales nicely. So now to this masa, we are going to add some flavorings here. We're going to add some salt. So you're going to need, for this amount, you're going to need about a teaspoon. For the 3, I think I did put 3.5, maybe a teaspoon and a half of, okay, that's not my teaspoon. There it is. My teaspoon of salt. And I'm going to do about half of that. Okay. So about a teaspoon and a half. And we're going to add a teaspoon of baking soda. And we're going to add a teaspoon of baking powder. Okay. And you're going to mix this all up. Make sure it's the right masa, the right tamale masa that you use, not flour, because this is not flour. This is corn masa for tamales. I'm going to add just a pinch, a little bit more salt, because I did add that extra masa in there. So there we go. So we want to mix that up. Now to this, we're going to add some oil. And I know that my meat has oil already, but I'm going to go ahead and add about half a cup. You can use shortening. A lot of people like shortening, which is the lard. I like to make mine a little more on the healthier side. I'm going to cut back on the extra fat, so I'm going to use canola oil instead. So I'm going to add about half a cup of the canola oil. I'm actually already steaming some chicken tamales there. And then I'm going to add some of this, the chili sauce that I had there. So I'm just going to add about maybe a 1/4 cup to half a cup. Not a whole lot. So I'm going to save that for later. And then here's where we're going to add our broth. So we want to mix some of this so it helps bind the oil and the chili sauce. And that leftover broth that you had from the meat is what we're going to use. Now if I need more liquid, I just have to add water. So I'm going to start adding some of this. And I would say this is almost 3 cups of broth. And that's what we're going to add to our masa. So just add a little at a time just to get you started. Just incorporate that all together. Add a little more. I do want to reserve some of this because I like to use this for my to add to my topping of my tamales. So I'm not going to use all of that, but I do need more liquid here. So I do need to get some more water, because it's very important that this masa becomes almost like a fluffy pancake batter, but not as thin as a pancake batter. So let me go grab get a little bit of water here, and we'll add some more liquid. So this is the container I had the meat in. It's not going to hurt it. And like I said, just add enough liquid to your masa to make a nice fluffy paste. Now, usually I use the hand mixer, but I tried I used the spoon to just get me started because I don't want to splatter all over the place with the hand mixer. The hand mixer does help mix it more thoroughly. This is just to get me started. Okay, so I've got enough there to hold me through until I get my mixer going. And then we can beat it now. So here we go. This is going to help incorporate everything together, and you won't have a lot of dry spots, dry sections. If it starts to feel that it's a little thick or too dry, then just add a little more water. If you don't have a mixer, then just use your spoon and just keep mixing it till it gets all incorporated and it's soft and a little fluffy. And like I said, if it feels a little stiff or feels like it's too dry, just add a little bit more water and mix it. This is a good consistency right here. There we go. And this is what we're looking for. We're looking for a soft, fluffy batter type. Like I said, it's not like pancake mix because pancake is much thinner. This is more fluffy and smoother. So once you get the consistency you like, you don't want it too dry, like I said. And even when you're rolling your tamales and the dough starts to dry out, just drizzle a little more water, mix it in, and it'll soften up. Because it sometimes dries up, especially if you're making a whole bunch of them. If you're just making a few, you won't have that problem. Okay, so here we go. We've got our masa. We've got our meat filling done, our chili sauce. Some of that is for reserve for later. And I'm going to clean up my mess here, and I'm going to show you how to create your tamales. Okay, here we go. We've got our meat filling already shredded. I added the leftover chili sauce that I had. I had already made a little gravy for a side dish. I've washed and rinsed the husk, the dried husk that I had sitting in the hot water. They're nice and soft, so I kind of washed them, rinsed them, keep them in a container, so I'm ready to make them. And I've already made my masa. It's already soft. If it gets a little dry while you're busy with other things, you can just drizzle a little water and soften it up again. And I'm ready to show you how to form your tamales. You will need a container. I've got this large one. It's a stew pot that it's not a tamale container, but what I do is I modify it. I make sure that I put some water on the bottom, enough to fill at least about maybe less than a quarter, maybe an eighth of the container. Just fill it up with some water. I have a little rack there to help hold the tamales from falling in. And I usually cover it with some foil. I make some little holes. That way the steam will help go through and steam the tamales. This has a nice lid. If you don't have a container this big, I am making them in a smaller container, so you can just make lesser amount, but you also do want to have something to keep them from touching the basin. So I've got like a little vegetable steamer down there. Put a little foil around to help hold the tamales in place. Of course, I added the water and I'm steaming. These are the chicken ones that I made earlier, so those are still cooking away. So that's really what you need when you want to start cooking your tamales. So let me show you real quick how to put that together. What you need is either a spatula, a spoon, whatever works for you. You want to spread some of your masa on the bottom larger section of the husk, and just give it a nice little spread there. Doesn't have to be perfect because these are going to get rolled up anyway. So just grab yourself, a spoonful or so, and of course, and spread it on there. And then you get yourself some of your meat filling and spread that around. Depends on how thick you want to make these, but you don't want to make them too thick because then they're not going to roll. So just put enough filling in there to make your tamale. So you want to grab your end, just roll it up and tuck it in and keep rolling. Once you get it rolled together like a little taco, you're going to fold your tip, and then you're going to place them in your container. I'm going to go ahead and put them here on my plate after I make several of them, because it's easier to have a bunch of them together and that they hold up as you're lining them in the container. It's not easy to do just one by one. It's better to do maybe 10 or so before you put them in the container. So again, grab yourself some of your tamale masa. Spread that around a little bit like that. I find that these spatulas work easier than a spoon. If you don't have one, you can still use a spoon. Just put your spoon on there, spread it around, and that will work too. So again, just grab some of your filling and fill your tamale, and then roll them up and fold them over. You can pinch the edges a little bit if they tend to flap open. But once they're all lined up together, they kind of hold their shape. So I'm going to go ahead and do a few more of these just to kind of show you how to get them in your pot. If your leaves are too small, too short, you can line them up together like this and make a bigger one. And that will work too. And that makes it easier to wrap them and if they don't have enough to cover the tamales. So here we go. Again. Okay, let me go ahead and do some more, and then I'll show you how to get them in this, together to get them steamed. I'll be back. Okay, here we go. We've got our tamales filled with the meat filling and the masa, and they're ready for steaming. So make sure that you get your container, you add water to the bottom, You can put some foil to keep them from getting wet, but you do want to have enough water there to start building up a good steam. So what you want to do is you can grab your tamales, just hold on to them and lean them against the wall of your container. If you don't have a big pot like this one, you can also use a smaller one like this. I'm doing some chicken tamales here, and I've just put a rack on the bottom, a vegetable rack, and I put them on top, and it has water there, so these are steaming away. So you just want a container that will hold your tamales. I got a lot of them here, so this is going to be good for this one. Now if you also want to have something to help support the middle, you can use an oven-proof container, a small one like this, and put that there, and that will also help you to line them up and they won't fall all over the place. You can line them up like this, you know, like a little teepee, or you could just line them up together around. So whatever works, that helps you get them into your container. So this one, sometimes it's easier to just hold on to them and work around them, because they do flop over every now and then, so, but that's okay. So we've got them all here. Once you've got the water started and boiling, you're going to cover the tamale container, and you want to steam them at least for about an hour and a half to almost 2 hours. It depends on how many tamales you have and, you know, how big they are, because sometimes we make them a little chubby, but that's up to you. So here we go. You've got them in there. You got to turn on your fire. Get it on to a high heat. Get that started. Like I said, once it starts steaming, you want to cover this with a good lid. You want to get them steamed, leave them alone. When it's time to test them, maybe after about an hour and a half, you're going to take one out, and then you're going to open it. Then I'll show you how it's going to look, and you'll have an idea when they're ready. So you do want to keep checking once in a while to make sure there's water in the bottom. If you need more water, grab a container and just carefully put the water on the edge to fill some more water in, and then just cover it and let it steam. Like these over here, sometimes I have to add a little more water because this is a smaller container. So all I do is just open them up, pour a little water down in the basin on the edge. And these need a little more steaming, so then just that's what you do with this one too. So we're going to check them in about an hour and a half, and we'll see how they're coming along. Okay, we're almost done. Okay, time to check those tamales. They've been steaming here for about almost 2 hours. And let it steam really good so that they cook properly and thoroughly inside. Now what we want to do is we want to take one out. I have been adding water off and on because it gets low on water, and I want to make sure they stay steamed. Best way to make sure that they're done and ready is take one of them out and then just try to unravel it. It's a little warm, a little hot. There we go. And once you could see that it's holding its shape, then you know your tamales are ready. Okay, so they will get a little harder. Right now they're still a little soft, but that's okay. They will get a little harder once they cool. So, but these tamales are pretty much ready. You don't want to over dry them because they're not going to be moist. So the best thing to do is just go ahead and turn off the heat. By this time they're pretty much heated through and they're ready to, you know, cool and get served. So now you can take your tamales out of your container and put them in a platter. Now be very careful because these are really hot. You don't want to hurt yourself, so make sure you wear some gloves. Take them out carefully. You can line them up on your platter. they're still hot and they're still pretty much cooking through with all that steam. You can also leave them in the container until it's time to serve them if you want to keep them nice and hot. But I just want to show you that they're nice and plump, pretty much done and cooked. Just be careful because it's really hot, like I said. You want to keep them on a little pile like that, and that also keeps them nice and hot as you're getting ready to serve them. And like I said, you will enjoy these tamales. They're not really too hard to make, just takes a little time. But with some practice, you'll know the techniques of keeping them, cooking them and making them. Okay, so I hope you get a chance to try this recipe. Like I said, these are my family's beef tamales. I made some chicken ones too, which pretty much is the same thing except it's chicken instead of beef. I hope you get a chance to try these and let me know. I hope you enjoy them. Thank you.